Open your mind.
Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Internet Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. A very good evening.
Good evening, good evening. We'll go straight over to communications, Steve, because we're going to have a packed show tonight. Loads of information and great guests.
More information than you can shake a big stick at.
I tell you, it's going to be interesting tonight. Go ahead.
Right, info at oymireland.com for your emails. You can also navigate your way through to the chat room on the website, oymireland.com/OIM chat. You can log in there, and there's several people logged in already, so big hello to all of you. And you're going to be, you can navigate, sorry, I'll start that one again. You can chat away to yourselves, or you can also pose questions for our guests, a very special guest tonight joining us all the way from the US of A. You can also navigate your way through, if you like, to the guest book. You can leave a message in there for generations to come, and you can also give us a bell on.
Give us a call on 046 927 1212.
046 927 1212. If you're ringing from outside the Republic of Ireland, you may put 00353 in front of that. Alan.
Steve, thank you very much. Right, on our show tonight for our guest, we're going to be bringing them in shortly, in a few minutes, is Stewart and Janet Swerdlow.
I don't believe you got it wrong.
Did I get it right? Fantastic.
Swerdlow.
Swerdlow.
I think.
Because it's originally Russian, but we'll talk to Stewart about that in a few minutes. Now, Stewart is a Montauk Project survivor, which is like MK Ultra mind control stuff, and he has fascinating information about what went on there, and loads of other things we're just going to go into. Now, what we've done is we're going to have a quick talk about a few things that happened during the week, and then we're going to go straight in to talk to Stewart, because the amount of information that Stewart has and Janet has about what they're doing is fantastic. So we really want to maximise the time that we have with them. So without further ado, we're going to bring Stewart and Janet in. Good evening, Stewart and Janet. How are you doing?
Good
Hello,
evening.
Alan and Steve.
And Ireland and the rest
And
of the
Ireland.
world.
Ireland is one of our favorite countries.
Yes, it is. You know, I have a McCormick in my lineage.
Excellent. So there you go. You can say hello to all our Irish listeners and international listeners there. Thanks a lot for coming on, Stewart. As we were talking before we went live, and for their listeners, I was watching CMN, which is Regina Meredith, and she was interviewing Stewart. And to say that after the interview my jaw was on the floor would be an understatement, because the amount of information that you had, Stewart, was it's just fantastic. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is because we want to maximise the time we have with you, because there's going to be a lot to talk about. What we'll do is, as I say, we'll talk to you, Stewart, about your experiences on the Montauk Project. And then what we'll do is we go over to Janet. See, I keep saying Janet. Janet.
That's okay.
Sorry,
I like them
Janet.
both.
And we will talk about what you're doing now with the expansions.com website and how you're helping people deprogram them from the Illuminati. So I think that's the way we'll take it. But for starting off, tell us about the Montauk Project, how you got involved, why you got involved, and why were you selected?
Well, that's a very big question, but can I just make a suggestion on how Ireland can pay off their debts?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Well, you know that Ireland, in its history, was attacked and colonized by the Vikings in Norway, yes?
That's right, yeah.
So I think Ireland needs to invade Norway, take over their oil fields, and pay back all their debts with that.
Hey, fantastic.
I think that's the solution right there.
Yes.
So
the trouble is that we suffer from a lot of apathy over here. So there'll probably be a lot of people in the bar having a pint saying, that's a good idea, Stewart, but I think we'd probably stay here and have a drink first, you know?
No. Well, it was just a suggestion.
Yeah.
But going back to your question, and it's a long answer, so I hope you're ready
hang on.
for the answer.
Steve, do you want to say something?
No, go on.
Okay, go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I go back to my family background in order to answer that question. My great uncle Yakov Sverdlov was the first president of the Soviet Union, and his brother, my grandfather, was sent to Britain, actually to Liverpool, and then to the United States in order to start the communist parties in those countries and entice the workers back to the wonderful paradise of the Soviet Union. Of course, when the workers got there, they realized it wasn't much of a paradise, but they were stuck. Then my grandmother was a Soviet spy during World War II, but I would tell the listeners to remember that in World War II, the Soviets and Western Europe and the U.S. were allies at the time. So because of all of that, my family was very heavily monitored in the United States, and they still are, because of loyalty issues. And my father was used in secret work in Texas during the Korean War. And when I was born, and my birth was also quite strange, I was used also in experimentation for mind control and other purposes. And during the course of that time, from 1970 to 1983, was when the Montauk Project began, and that was in the eastern end of Long Island, New York, which was a base of operations back in the 1700s when George Washington was president, and this was used as a lookout point in case of a British invasion of the United States. And so there was a vast underground area that was built there. And as they dug underneath this location over the centuries, actually, they discovered that it connected to tunnel systems and a previously existing cavern that they believed were created by the Atlanteans over 10,000 years ago or 12,000 years ago. And so Montauk Project was about, at the time, genetic manipulation, mind control, weather control, esoteric weaponry, and even interdimensional space and time travel. It was quite a vast network of experiments and projects that the secret government was using. And not only were U.S. And Canadian scientists available there, but they also had Germans, Russians, even Israelis at some time, and there was it went on for quite a number of years. During that time period of 1970 to 1983, it is estimated somewhere between 200,000 to 300,000 people were used in the experimentation, and only less than 1% actually survived, and I was one of those people who was a survivor. Now, why was I used? Well, because of my family background, but also they said that my genetics were interesting and that they wanted to see how much they could stuff in there and use. Unfortunately, because of the use of electromagnetic energies and microwave technologies, it left me physically blind. And of course, that was part of the project. They wanted to create a person who could see into other realities without the use of devices, basically to become a human technological piece. And so they used me to go into what they called hyperspace levels, to look at the colors, tones, and archetype that emanate into all existence and creation. And they also used me for espionage purposes to psychically spy the United States and the New World Order. So it was very comprehensive.
Would that be classed as remote viewing as well? Would you be doing that?
Well, interesting question, because remote viewing was created many years after that, and it was basically a cover story. The government created the idea of remote viewing and the techniques of it in order to give to the public as a cover story for what they were actually doing behind the scenes. Remote viewing is kind of like, well, I hate to say it, but it's like child's play compared to what the government was doing in the Montauk Project and other projects.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it wasn't until December of 1999 that I actually had surgery that helped me to see still holding so far, so I'm glad for that, although it's maybe diminished a little bit. But that's how I do my work now, because basically I see energy fields, archetypes, DNA, the internal organs. I am like a human X-ray machine or MRI machine, and that's how I do my work in readings with people, by looking at their energy fields, tapping into them, and seeing what may or need correction. And so that's what we do here at Expansions Now. We took the negative experiences that I had and turned it around into work that actually will help people. And beyond all that, I learned how to deprogram the mind from all the mind control and programming that had been placed into people. And the audience should realize that the entire planet is now surrounded by satellites and ground antenna that are used to transmit and amplify scalar waves or mind control waves to the entire population of the planet. So that when people ask me how many people are programmed, I say 7 billion. 100% of the population has some form of mind control. However, about 10 to 15% at this point are what we call specifically programmed or deeply programmed, and they have very deep layers and levels of mind control and programming with specific functions and alters that need to be blended and merged back into the original personality.
Would that tie into people being targeted, specific people being targeted, and them using that technology to do that?
Oh, absolutely. For example, we see all the time about people specifically being targeted to perform certain functions. For example, you've heard, and I put this on my website recently, all of the anomalies going on with pilots and flight attendants and passengers on airlines who go berserk and do strange things. These people are being specifically targeted to perform certain functions in order to scare the public or to test certain events that are about to come up. So, yeah, we're seeing that happen almost on a daily basis now.
And you had that in the States last week with the captain of the plane having to be subdued.
Yes, absolutely. I was in Europe at the time, but I did hear about it. And, yes, this is almost a weekly event here.
That's incredible. Tell us something about the programming, how they actually broke down. I said there's something about, you were talking about the compartments, 33 by 33 or something like that, and how they psychologically break you down, and the treatments they do to break you down.
Yeah, again, a very long story. I do, just as an aside, suggest that people who are interested in this particular topic read my books, True Reality of Sexuality and 13 Cubed, as well as my DVDs on mind control and programming, so they get the details of it. But mind control and programming are actually very ancient. Goes back to many, many, many centuries, and in fact, I know that a lot of techniques are not even from this world, but have been brought here from elsewhere. But it was back in the Persian time where the Ashashin were created by the Sultan, the Sultan who lived on the mountain, as they say, who created drug-induced mind control at the time to create assassins to do his bidding. And over the centuries and millennia, it was detailed and enhanced, so that by the time we get to World War II, we see the Germans using the concentration camps as study halls or experimental areas where they could test various forms of mind control without being watched. And so they would test to see how much a person could take before they would be fractured. And when the mind is fractured, or I should say the personality is fractured through trauma and torture and deprivation, it creates a cube form in the mind, which is 13 by 13 by 13. And if you do the math, you will find that that allows for up to 2,197 compartments or alters or subpersonalities within the individual that can be programmed into functions and other uses, both as full personalities, subpersonalities, partial personalities, etc., which can be activated or triggered through the use of codes, whether through colors, numbers, words, events, etc. It's quite a vast topic.
So this is where we're talking about the MK Ultra and the trigger word or sentence to activate that personality in that person.
Yes, and unfortunately, these days, the technology is so high-tech that they don't even need to bring a person in for programming sessions. It can be done directly through satellite transmission, cell phone tower, etc., so that you could be walking in the street and you're programmed, you don't even know it. You're having lunch and you're being programmed. You know, that's why they want everyone to have a cell phone. That's why they want everyone to have a computer, because all the mind control waves are going through all of devices.
That's incredible. We did have a guest on, and Barry's going to be on the show again, and he's an expert in microwave warfare, and he's been telling us all about these. He was trained by the UK government, and he used this technology and was aware of this technology, and to the level of what they knew and how they could control and manipulate people using the different frequencies.
Yeah, that's right. In Britain, it's based out of Tavistock, as you may know.
Yeah.
And but I should, to finish the story I was saying, you know, after World War II, there was something called Project Paperclip in the United States, which brought the Nazi scientists to North America in order for them to continue their studies in mind control and programming. And many of them were also brought to Soviet Union and Britain. And those were the main headquarters at the time for programming and mind control. And so it was based on all of this over the decades since the 1940s until now, that Montauk existed, Area 51, Tavistock, Odessa in Ukraine, which was part of the Soviet Union. All of these locations were used for mind control experimentations.
That's incredible. And you obviously being one of the elite few that managed to survive, but also because of this, the ability that you could control so much. You said that they used you on regarding time travel as well.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, it's a bit outrageous for your listeners, and I did write about it in my autobiography, Montauk, the Alien Connection. And yes, they at first used alien technology, which came from a star system called Sirius A. And this technology was then modified and upgraded by U.S. and other nationality scientists at the Montauk Project and other locations in order to decide how they were going to use it. Basically, it runs on frequency, and they learned that every point in time and space has a unique set of vibrations or coordinates that don't exist anywhere else. So, if you know where you want to go, and you know the particular point of coordinates or vibrational frequency of that particular spot, and then you create a matching frequency identical to it, there'll be an instant transmission or connection between those 2 points, since they can only exist in one location in creation. So that's basically how time travel exists, and even deep space travel exists, by setting the coordinates to your destination, and then making your vehicle vibrate to that vibration. Is instantaneous transmission and connection, so that billions and billions of light, or even gazillion years of time travel, can be done in a split second. That's
incredible. And obviously we have an enormous amount of parallel universes. And the one thing that I've said before, I don't know whether you can confirm this, is that we have free will. And free will dictates which universe we go into every second of the day, whichever we decide. So maybe today, we have a timeline where you didn't come on the show. So there's all these different timelines, and what changes is our free will dictates which timeline we take.
Well, if I could maybe add something to that. Basically, yes, we do have free will, absolutely. However, we also have our connection to the God mind, which is the oversoul. It's our terminology that we use. And it's the oversoul, which is the master consciousness of the individual that really helps the individual decide. Because if you leave it up to the human to decide, there would be no consistency. You'd be bopping around the different alternate realities and not have any contiguous lifetime. So it's really a question of where you're focused. And all possibility exists. So that we found out at the Montauk Project, you really cannot go back and change the past. Reason is because everything's happened anyway. And it's simply a question of where you focus and which timeline you want to pursue. So it's a very simple process, actually. You can think of it also like a radio station. If you turn the dial just a little bit in any direction, you get a different station. Keep turning and you get another station. It's all on the same radio, but all different frequencies and different programming.
And obviously this is done through the mind. This time travel is done through your mind, yes?
Yes, well, also technology. The time travel that was done created devices, huge actually, that were able to tune into locations. And what they did at the Montauk Project was, in the beginning, in the early years, they would use what they called expendable people, foster children, derelicts, orphans, people who no one... And they would just tag them or put what they called an anchor device on them and just send them to a coordinate, to see where it wound up. And in that way, they were able to map and chart various different locations, and sometimes it was hit and miss, and sometimes they would get coordinates from their alien helpers, if you will. And then they would create an anchor there, and then they would have a fixed connection from point A to point B. And sometimes they would open what you call a wormhole or a vortex, which are two different things. A wormhole is a shortcut between 2 points in the same reality, and a wormhole is a connection between two different realities. And so that's what Montauk was about, mapping all of this out, connecting one place to the other, seeing what they could find out, and basically trying to create a new empire that will be coming into fruition quite shortly, I think.
So when you say about the new empire, you're talking about the NWO, the Illuminati.
Yes, and of course, in my books I talk about the Draco Empire, from which we all originated in one form or another, and what the Illuminati plan on doing is to create their own version of it and usurp the power of the original group.
Right. Well, before we go down into that, one thing I'd like to talk about is the time travel side of things. Now, one of the things you said on the interview to Regina was that they were very fascinated or very interested in what happened 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what they got you to do or what they asked you to do or view at that time?
Yes, and in order to answer that question, I need to tell you that back in the 1950s, when there was a very strong interaction between the U.S. government and certain alien groups, the U.S. government was given what we today would consider to be a DVD, if you will, which was a filming or a video of the crucifixion and the life of the Christ figure. And so the government was very interested in this because they learned that the Christ figure was actually a genetic alien manipulation who was created in order to skewer certain human groups on the earth in a certain direction. And so in the Montauk Project, they wanted to go back to that time period to see if they could learn what happened and recreate a version of it in the modern time. And in order to do so, they wanted to extract the DNA of the Christ figure so that they could clone it for purposes in our current time period. So one of the missions that was given to myself was to actually go back to that time period and extract a vial of blood from that person. And I did describe that in the Montauk Alien Connection book in great detail.
Okay, so was obviously what you've seen and what you've the information you've come across. What's your take on who Jesus was at that time?
Well, he was genetic manipulation. You know, when they talk about the Immaculate Conception, the reason it is because he was implanted in Mary's womb, and that's what they called Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
And he was part alien genetics as well as part human genetics. He was also programmed to perform certain functions on the earth. However, during his lifetime, he was taken by other factions to what we call mystery schools or other locations outside of the Middle East for different kinds of training, so that in effect, when the entire scenario of his returning to Jerusalem and creating the apostles and all of this occurred, he had basically overcome most of his programming. So it was a failed alien experiment, but a success spiritually.
Okay, and I'm just, it's a fascinating subject to go into and talk about. And just looking at that, what was their idea? What was their plan? What was that experiment? What was he supposed to do for them?
At the time, on the Earth, there were many alien groups creating their own genetic lineage, if you will, based on basically because the failure of Atlantis and the refugees going all over the planet and trying to create different civilizations. It was basically a free-for-all at the time, with different groups trying to create their own versions of it, or one trying to overcome the other. And so the Christ experiment was about taking certain groups of human people with certain genetics and moving them into a different direction so that it would allow for eventual alien occupation of the planet and control systems.
So it wasn't really for the benefit of mankind, more for the benefit of the aliens to, as an experiment, to get to where they want to be.
Basically correct.
Okay. And what's the obviously we have what people call the Bible. And I know certain parts of the Bible was written probably 200 years after Jesus was around. But I think there was other parts written by a family. Are you aware of that?
Yes, the Piso family of
That's
Rome.
It. Yeah.
Which is about 3 centuries after Christ. And you have to remember, even the books by the apostles that were written, many of them were written decades later. So imagine even today, if an event happened yesterday, and then 30 years from now someone decided to write about it, what accuracy would there be in their writing? 30 years later, especially at a time when there was no video or copy machines or things like that. They were just doing it all from memory. So we have to keep that in mind as well. You also have to keep in mind that the first or the Old Testament or the first 5 books of Moses are really symbolic. If there, as you know, those of you who have read about the Bible code know that those books can be fed directly into a computer system, and that there are what they call skip sequences that show coding in that book. Obviously was not created by a human being, and in fact some of the codes in the Old Testament refer to a computer needed in order to decipher them. So it's quite fascinating. And then we get to the New Testament, and we also find that most of it has been edited, rewritten, things added and subtracted by the Roman Empire in order to use it as a control system over the population.
Okay, this is why the Pisa family were involved in writing it, to actually edit it in a way that it actually played into what the Romans wanted to control the masses.
Yes, correct. Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire in order to create a new world religion at the time, a new world order at the time for the known world. And many of the books were deleted. In fact, if you know about the Nag Hammadi scrolls, which were discovered in Egypt a long time ago, there was the book of Philip, of Thomas, and of Mary Magdalene. And those have been suppressed and eliminated by the Vatican because they basically tell people that there's no intermediary necessary for communion with the God mind, that each individual is in fact his or own priest or minister and does not need anyone else in order to communicate with God mind. And of course that totally undermines the Catholic Church.
Exactly, because there's obviously books that have been put away in the Vatican that will never see the light of day, that will contradict what we're being told.
Absolutely. And you know, the Templars found that out around 1100 AD, and that's why the Catholic Church was tiptoeing around them until the 1300s, because the Templars found this information buried in the stables of Solomon, and they blackmailed the church with it.
Yeah, I'm just obviously typing up something here. Exactly, and because we've heard this before, that certain documents have been hidden away. There is a book out there called, I think it's called In God's Name, and the chap wrote this in the 70s, and he talks about these books that were put away in the Vatican, never to be taken out. And I don't want to dwell on this because there's a lot more that we're going to be talking about, but throughout history, and I think David I talks about this as well. You'll see in a lot of cultures the same thing happens over and over again, where a savior is born, he lives a certain amount of years, he does certain miracles, and then he's crucified and he saves people and he rose again from the dead. And this is a common thing through a lot of other religions.
Yes.
So would that be a case of people, them religions, you know, a similar genetic experiment in them religions as well?
When we have universal stories, you know, like the flood or the resurrection and these kind of things, that's the common theme, because humanity or every species has a group or species mind pattern. And that group or species mind pattern has foundational thoughts that are common to all the people in that species. And so it creates and projects out these scenarios for a savior to come, for change in direction of the species in order to save it. And that's what it's universal in many cultures. And it also shows a common origin. Because in my Blue Blood, True Blood book, I talk about the common origin of all humanity in the star system called Lyrae, Lyra, which is the origin of all human beings in our galaxy.
Okay, so that's the next question I was going to ask you. The whole UFO scenario with the likes of the Anunnaki and stuff like that, what you're saying is that we actually come from a different star system and we were seeded on the planet by this civilization. Where do the Anunnaki fit into this?
Yeah, you know, the Anunnaki are from what was called Nibiru, and Nibiru used to orbit our solar system every 3,600 years. And basically, they were not from this galaxy. They came from Andromeda Galaxy. It was an artificially created vehicle, basically, which they used in order to seed certain locations, do mining work, create slave races, this type of thing. The Anunnaki were reptilian-like. They are actually an enemy of the Draco. They don't get along with each other. You know, the Sumerian tablets that were translated, many of them were translated with a little bit of an error in them. So that's a whole nother topic. But certainly the basic premise is that they came here to create mining, extract certain materials from the earth, and to create a slave race.
Okay, so that whole kind of take on an Anunnaki creating us as a slave race is pretty much confirmed from what you have researched and found out.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, because that is the general take on things. I've had a look at some of these Sumerian tablets and had a look at some of Stitchin's work.
Yes.
And regarding, if you look at the tablets and they have planets on them, and I think there's about 10 planets, and probably Nibiru is one of them planets because we don't have that many now where the way things are at the moment. And these tablets are going back 4,000 or 5,000 BC. So the question has to be asked, where did they get this information from?
Where did the Sumerians get it?
Well, they were obviously given it by the Anunnaki, I assume.
Yes, but you also have to remember that Sumer had quite a long history. Before the Anunnaki arrived, Sumer was colonized by human refugees from Mars, which were refugees from Lyrae. And the reason they left Lyrae was because that civilization was destroyed by the Draco attack on that star system. And so it's a very long story, but the reptilians were actually the first to colonize this planet in what we would call Lemuria, or Mu, in what is now the Pacific Ocean. And then the humans came afterwards and colonized what we would call Atlantis. And there was war between them. And so ultimately, make a very long story short, the Atlanteans destroyed Lemuria using geomagnetic energy, sunk it beneath the ocean. And then for many, many millennia, there was just the humans on the Earth. But the survivors of Lemuria went underground, and that began the legends of demonic entities under the earth because people became afraid of the sight of reptilian beings. But when the human colonists created Sumer, and Sumer kind of appeared out of nowhere, suddenly it existed. Then ultimately the reptilians came to the surface, used Sumer as a way of recreating their control over the earth. They created hybridization programs, which is why the Sumerians had depicted their gods as reptilian-like or human-reptilian hybrids. And the Anunnaki came later on. The Anunnaki came really more towards Africa, and they created what now we know as the black race to work in the mines. And the legends are told in Africa about this. So there's a few things that happened simultaneously. History is a little bit more complicated than we're led to believe. And it's not so straightforward. There were many factions involved, many hands involved at different times that led up to the present moment.
Yeah, there is a Zulu warrior which David Icke interviewed called Credo Mutwa.
Yes, yes.
And he talks an awful lot. They have relics, like some are 500 years old, passed down through the generations of the Zulu tribe, which depict reptilian faces, and they have artifacts with reptilians on them, which kind of confirms what's going on. Now there's some people out there will actually be listening, and they're probably saying, that sounds a bit mad. Then there's the other half of the camp who'll kind of agree to it. Now, we do have part of us in our DNA is reptilian. We do have some reptilian DNA in us.
Yes, and we are foundationally reptilian. And in fact, the proof is in gestation. Look at how a fetus develops in the womb. For the first few weeks, it is an androgynous reptilian being. And only afterwards do human or mammalian genetics open up and then change it into one gender or another of a mammalian type. But that's because the DNA is following the sequence in which it was put in. And in my book, Blue Blood, True Blood, I talk about the connection between the humans and the reptilians on the planet when they decided to make a peace treaty and create a human being, which was a synthesis of the two different groups. And that's why it says in Genesis, let us make man in our image. Now, who's the we and the our? Why are all references to God in the Old Testament plural? There's not a singular God, it's a plural God.
And this ties into Adam and Eve, because Eve was made out of part of Adam.
Yeah, and that's the analogous story of the removal of an androgynous reptilian body into the separate genders of male and female. And human genetics were added to it, which is why the human being gestates that way in the womb.
Yeah, and you know, to me, the whole kind of Adam and Eve story, the fairy story of Adam and Eve, is more got to do with genetic experiments.
Absolutely, it is.
That's really what it boils down to, and even down to, you know, talking about in the Bible about Noah's Ark. Two animals, 2 by 2. I think that was more in relation to DNA.
Absolutely correct.
You know, right? Okay, let's fast forward a little bit, Stewart, and let's move into the whole Illuminati agenda and the technology they have, and what they're doing, and what they're trying to do.
Okay, and again, very, very big topic, you know, and this year is quite significant in their agenda because, as you know, for years you've been hearing about 2012 and the end of the world and all of this stuff. Well, and in fact, the Mayan calendar has nothing to do with the end of the world. The Mayan calendar is a circle. When one cycle ends, another one begins, and it's been that way for many thousands of years. And so the cycle that ends this year, December 21st, 2012, another one begins on the 22nd. And in fact, Janet and I recently, end of last year, were in Central America, and we met with a lot of the Mayans, the elders actually, and told us that they're absolutely appalled by the Western idea of the end of the world. They said it's not what the Mayan calendar says at all. In fact, there was one elder that mentioned, he said, you know, when I wake up on December 22nd, 2012, I'm going to do what I do every day. I'm going to get up and make coffee, watch the news, and continue on my day. That's not going to be the end of the world. Basically, it's an Illuminati agenda. It's an Illuminati idea because they learned in programming and mind control, when you create fear, that opens up the brain for input. So by keeping people afraid and concerned, it opens them up for programming and mind control. And so December 21st, 2012 is the target date for complete global domination by the Illuminati. And they plan to do this through several scenarios. They plan to create a staged alien invasion where people will think the world is being attacked from aliens. And then, in order to save us, this master race will appear, chase away the attacking aliens, and then will allow for the second staged coming of Christ, who will proclaim the New World Order as his new holy empire. And then they kind of wrap up the whole thing with a new world religion, a global government, everybody under one control system, and, of course, when they test this second coming of Christ and they get his DNA, it will exactly match the blood samples on the Shroud of Turin. And so who's going to dispute that when the DNA is identical? Of course it has to be Christ. Now, recently, I should say in the last couple of years, you know, the Shroud of Turin vanished for a little bit of time when there was a fire at the church in Turin. And a piece of it suddenly manifested itself in Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And the Israeli scientists tested that piece of the shroud and found out that it had pollen samples that could only have been from the Middle East 2,000 years ago. So thus, they verified the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. And Janet and I, just last summer, went to the church there and saw the shroud and all the, all the accoutrements around it. So it's all a nice, neat little package wrapped up for the public consumption, and they will such a way that you will not dispute it.
That's right. One of the things that was said to us, Dr. Carol Rosen was on, and she worked with Werner von Braun. And Werner von Braun said there's 4 different ways they're going to manipulate the population, and the 4th option will be the fake alien invasion. Now, yes. I've said this before on the show, from a psychological point of view, it's a bit like Independence Day. what will happen is there's the difference between harmony and disharmony. And Ronald Reagan said in the 80s about how insignificant their fights would be if we were attacked from something from outside the earth. And at the moment we are Irish, English, American, but like any family, if something outside attacks a family, the differences are put aside and the family get together to protect the family. And this is exactly what's going to happen. And I feel this is what's going to happen, is that they're going to use this fake alien invasion to, and people will say, okay, let's stop infighting between us and let's get together, be a human race and fight these aliens. And well, I'm going to go over to Steve in a minute too. There's loads of questions coming in. But one of the things I just want you to talk about, which is very important, got to do with this fake invasion, is the technology they have regarding holographic equipment.
Yes, that's Blue Beam Project.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in fact, Blue Beam Project is quite old. It was tested back in 1961 in Havana Harbor when a U.S. submarine surfaced just off the coast and projected an image of the Virgin Mary over Havana Harbor in order to shock the people of Havana to think that Mary was telling them to not be communists anymore and go back to God. So that should tell you how old the technology is. And add, 50, 60 years later, you can imagine how advanced it is. They can create images in the sky and on the ground to make you believe that there is an army, that there is a fleet of UFOs, that Jesus has returned. They have even made it so that sound will accompany the visual images. And a Japanese company has created a version of the holographic images you can actually feel, very much like on Star Trek when they have the holodeck and they interact with these holographic images like as if they were real. That's kind of the technology that exists. In fact, they tested just outside of Sydney, Australia, a couple of years ago. A huge object was seen streaking across the sky headed towards Sydney Airport. And they said it was a meteor, and then people in the area reported that the thing crashed and exploded with this loud noise, and all the emergency crews went to the area and found absolutely nothing, because it was a holographic image that was so technologically advanced it could be picked up on radar so that it would be physically proven it was there, and it made sound so you could hear it and see it, and yet there was nothing really there. They also tested it last summer over Canada. You may recall almost every week there was this huge fireball flying over Alberta, and then they said it crashed, into the ground. Of course, nothing was ever found. How could a huge fireball crash into the ground in the Rockies and there's not even a spot of it left? So these were tests. They're testing the Blue Beam Project in various areas. You might recall last year over Norway, the huge object that was seen over northern Norway.
The spiral.
The spiral.
Yeah.
And then if you look in the images, you could see behind it a little bit of a satellite transmission being projected out behind it. Mm-hmm. So all of these things are happening all over. And people see UFOs in the skies. Many of them are simply projections. They're not physically there. And that's how they are going to accomplish this, because, when you see something with your own eyes, you believe that it's there.
And do you feel that they will achieve the goal?
Very interesting question. And every show I do, people ask me that question. I think they're very close to achieving their goal, but I know that there is sabotage against them occurring even as I speak. And my feeling is they may come very close and fail, or they may succeed briefly, but they will fail. So ultimately, I don't think that they will be completely successful.
Yeah, we feel that with the guests that we've had on, the general consensus is that they won't succeed from a spiritual and a physical level, with everything that's going on at the moment.
And another reason is that you may program a human being completely and totally, but you can't get 100% because the God mind within cannot be programmed. And so when you take human beings and push them up against the wall and give them no alternative, guess what? They're going to react because they have nothing to lose. And I think that's what we're starting to see happen now.
Yeah, definitely big time, especially over here. Steve, over to you with, you have a few questions for Stuart?
Yeah, Stuart, that's powerful information, what you're just saying there. I mean, when Alan was saying to me during the week that he's seen some of your information and his jaw was on the ground, I mean, mine's on the table here. It's not quite on the ground just yet, but it's getting there.
But get your face off the table. You don't know where it's going.
Right, okay. There was a question come in earlier, Stuart, in relation to a word that you used in your book, the word assassin, and one of our listeners was wondering what the connection was between the word assassin and hash or hashish.
Yeah, it's very because the Arabic word and the Persian word is ashashin, and in order to program, they use the drug. And the drug was related to the word hashashim and became hashish, cutting it short. So yes, it's a definite connection there. And unfortunately, in modern times, there are assassin programming, stalker programming, vigilante programming. There's modern versions of it now.
Yeah, quite interesting, because I remember seeing a documentary a couple of years ago, and they were saying in relation to hashish that when people use that particular drug, that it opens up neurological pathways in the brain. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's powerful. And
not only that, Stephen Allen, quite honestly, marijuana is also used in this way, and marijuana is a programming trigger, which is why they push it all over the planet.
Mm. That's what happened to Cathy O'Brien. That's why they wanted to kill her, because she was a programmed MK-Ultra sex slave, and when she started to smoke marijuana, it had the opposite effect. It started bringing back the things that they tried to lock out. And this is why, when she was obviously saved by that chap, I forget his name, but she was smoking it, and it actually released the memories of what was going on, which they tried to lock out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. A couple of questions from Kelt, a regular listener to the show. Kelt's wondering, are you familiar with the work of a guy called Dan Winter?
Yes, I know of him.
Okay.
But I do not talk about other people's work.
No, that's fine. No, I think he was just wondering if you were actually familiar with his work. He didn't elaborate on the question. And also another one from Kelt. Can you please ask guest the connection between blue humans in Indian mythology as gods? I don't know if you understand that question. I don't actually understand it.
Blue humans in Indian, meaning East Indian or American Indian?
India.
Oh, India. Okay, yeah. Basically, the blue humans are the blue bloods. It's not that they were blue. It's that they had high reptilian genetics, and when the reptilian blood has a very high copper content, and when copper content oxidizes, it turns a blue-green color. And so that was the reference in those days to the so-called blue people. They weren't really blue. They just had a high copper content in their blood.
Interesting. That's very interesting. And the final one for the moment, one of our listeners, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Kei or Kai, it's K-E-I, and Kai wants to know what does Stuart think about what the Illuminati think of you and your existence?
Well, they never send me Christmas cards, or anything like that. And people ask me, how come you're alive? It's like they're disappointed I'm still living. So I said, well, you know what? There are 7 billion people on this planet. How many of those 7 billion are listening to what I say? Really a very small fraction. So I'm quite insignificant to the Illuminati.
One more just popped up there on the screen, so I may as well throw it at you. It's from K. It's from I thought it was Kai. It's actually K. They just told me the proper pronunciation. And K's question, another one: have Janet and Stuart have you taken? Hang on, I'll read that again. I want to know if Janet and Stuart has orally taken Olive Gold 03, one of the product they have. Product. It must be products.
Yeah, they say that you can take that orally, and actually they're in the process of developing one that's a better price and a little bit larger quantity. I have used it on my gums. That's as far as I've gone as far as personally ingesting it. And because I've been curious, I've been through a lot of braces and so forth lately to see if it helps. So I have done that. Everyone I know who's used the olive gold in any way loves it. And it has done everything from drop warts off in a couple of weeks to change age spots on the face. And all it is ozonated olive oil. It's supposed to be extremely, extremely pure.
Oh,
So it can't hurt you by orally taking it in, but because it's not FDA approved, we're not allowed to do that.
At this point.
okay. Well,
Yeah, because it's not FDA approved.
yeah, we know what the FDA are like.
Yeah.
Okay, just touching base on chemtrails. What's your take on chemtrails?
Well, I don't take them. So, it's a rough crowd out there.
I'll tell you,
what. It's a rough room. But, okay, chemtrails, they've been around for decades. And basically, there's two versions of them. One version is spraying genetically altered viruses, bacteria, and other creations in order to promote illnesses on the surface of the planet. And also to create weather anomalies. Another version is to create an energetic web around the planet, like a grid system, so that they can more easily pinpoint certain places on the Earth for transmissions of ELF and microwave bombardments.
Okay, we've also heard probably a few more suggestions as to what they are. One is that they are changing the atmosphere so certain aliens can come down and actually survive on the Earth because the atmosphere is too oxygenated, or maybe could be the opposite to that. But the chemtrails are actually changing the atmosphere.
I would have to say that's not true.
Okay. But you do what's your take on the solar flares and the predictions of these solar flares and the I think the EMFs they're predicted for 2012. There's going to be a lot of solar flares from the sun, and they're talking about equipment and electronic equipment being knocked out, and could be grid systems knocked out as well, especially when it's really focused on North America, but obviously it's going to affect it globally if it does happen. Have you heard anything about these solar flares?
Oh, it's on the news every other week here, and of course nothing ever really happens. It's just one of the scare techniques that they do. However, let me explain something, and I talk about this in my work in Simultaneous Existence, where, as we mentioned earlier, that there are infinite realities, infinite universes, physical and non-physical, and they are all connected to one another through stars and black holes. A black hole in one universe is a star on the other end in another universe. These are vortices. And so our star, or every star, is an exit point of a black hole somewhere else. Those civilizations that know how to use this natural highway between universes enter a black hole and come out in a star at another one. What we're seeing here is exit points on our star of vehicles, and you may have seen videos or even still shots of huge objects coming out of our sun. And traveling out into space after they exit the sun.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and so what we're seeing is a massing of a fleet in the Kuiper Belt on the outside of our solar system, on the far point. And that is basically more of an interest to me than anything the Illuminati is doing, because I think that we are going to have a real invasion. And I also feel like there's massive sabotage from whatever's in the Kuiper Belt to the Illuminati plans on the Earth. Now, that doesn't mean that what's in the Kuiper Belt are saviors, because it's just another control group. Everyone coming here has their own agenda, but this particular agenda is anti-Illuminati.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. Funny you should say that. I was watching a video earlier on today, And it was an interview with Clifford Stone and Bob Dean, the two of them together. And they were talking about this. And they were saying, well, actually, there's a third group of people who are a higher level race, which they call the Watchers. And they're watching, because they know there's malevolent and benevolent aliens from both sides. And they don't want the Illuminati to go and do what they're doing and destroy the planet. So these Watchers are saying, look, we're going to watch what's going on here. And if you go and do something, like we've heard of the stories about the nukes being disabled, and submarines, nuclear submarines being disabled, war missiles being disabled, missile silos, both an American and a Russian. Now, so this is what they're saying, this is what Bob and Clifford are saying from the information they're getting. Now, we know that there's a rumour about false flag, and there's two that we've come across and talked to guests about. One is the Enterprise, the aircraft carrier, the Enterprise, which is apparently in the Gulf. They have to, it's supposed to be decommissioned, but they think by getting Israeli subs to blow it up and blame it on Iran, that will start World War III. And the other one is obviously the Olympics in London, where you have billions of people watching the TV. Maybe holographics being used for that, I don't know. What's your take on the false flag scenario?
Well, actually, I've spoken about the London Olympics for quite a while now. I believe something will happen during that time period to initiate the staged alien invasion, and also to coincide with the Queen's Jubilee, which, by the way, she's never invited me to tea. And second thing is, as far as the Iran situation and the incidences going on in the Gulf, and we should be looking at the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, where there are not one but two nuclear Israeli submarines. I personally believe that the Israelis are creating quite a scenario. And it's getting a bit complicated. I don't know if you want me to go into all of that right now, but I was in Iran, and I did see, the people there really are very friendly, very nice. Yes, the leader is a little bit of a loony toony, but I personally do not believe Iran has terrible ambitions. They're very much interested in creating a better infrastructure for their own country. I think that no country should be nuclear. I don't believe in nuclear weapons. Nobody should have any of it. But I think Iran is being used as a convenience in order to consolidate a new crusade, which is what I see happening against between Christianity and Islam, which is very big in Europe, by the way. I mean, just came after 2.5 weeks in Europe. Everywhere I went, everyone was totally anti-Muslim, and they considered it an affront that all the Muslims were entering into their countries. But the Israelis are forming a union. They're forming a union with Greece, Cyprus, Azerbaijan, Romania, Armenia, Georgia. And if you look at the map, that completely surrounds Turkey and Syria and borders right on Iran. But it goes beyond that, because I personally believe that Greece and and Cyprus are going to remove themselves from the EU and join a union with Israel. In fact, Cyprus and Greece have agreed to allow Israeli warplanes to land on their territories. Now, Cyprus and Greece are part of the EU. Wouldn't the EU have to approve that? But they did not. So there's something going on way behind the scenes. And another country to look at with an Israeli connection is India. In India, they have given the Israelis the largest embassy land in the country. So, recently it was leaked out, and I put the word leak in quotes, that Azerbaijan was allowing Israel to use its territory as a staging area against Iran. But I think that's a diversion. I think it was the Israelis themselves who leaked that information, not the White House, as been reported on the news. And I think that's because then everyone is looking in Azerbaijan, when in fact they should be looking in the other direction, towards India.
there's an awful lot going on over there. We had Annie Michon on the show, who's an MI5 whistleblower, and I asked Annie regarding her mother on the false flag in London, and she said, well, she's planning to make sure her mother is actually out of the country for the 2 weeks that the Olympics are on, because she doesn't trust what might happen. So I think we have to be very careful, and if they're going to use holographic equipment, you know, if you walk out like in Independence Day when Will Smith came out of the house and looked up and seen a UFO, you know, ask yourself the question, you know, is that real or is it fake? I think we have to be careful. As I say, Werner von Braun did say that the fourth flag and the fourth thing they're going to use is the alien invasion. As to what's going to happen, you know, there's loads of talk about the disclosure, and there's loads of information out there about stuff we can't see, but we know what's going on. As you say, there's the ships going in and out of the sun, maybe using it like a some kind of portal to go from one universe to another, one galaxy to another. And there's loads of talk about motherships and ships outside of the Earth actually sitting up there. I don't know what they're waiting for, and whether there's going to be disclosure, I don't really know. You know, we have Stephen Greer talks about it, but to be honest with you, I don't know whether that's going to happen.
You know, anything that's disclosed right now is not true. So any information that comes from an official source, I do not trust it. But I can categorically state that any event that does occur during the London Olympics is going to be staged. And people just need to understand, no matter what you hear, that time period, it's not real.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions, Stuart. One for another question from Kay. I'm not sure exactly what this question means, but she wants to know: does Stuart ever feel triggered when you meet with your parents, and do you forgive yourself every day? I'm not kind of sure where that's coming from.
Did my mother call her?
No, but I think it's got to do with your mother. I know about this. Go ahead.
Well, they say if it's not one thing, it's your mother. So, well, you know, I do my release work on my parents, you know, and I'm at peace with them, and they don't bother me anymore in the way that they used to, and we come to a place in my life where we just, you know, we're civil with each other, and that's kind of it. I'm not sure exactly where the person was going with that question. But yes, I do my release work, my deprogramming. I've done it for years and years and years, and I'm in a really good place right now with the people around me in my life.
I think it's got to do with forgiveness, Stuart, because your mother, without going into too much detail, because that's a big part, but you know when you were talking on CMN regarding going to this dentist guy every once a week, and she wouldn't tell you why you had to kind of drag it over, and why, and she didn't tell you why you were going to this person and why you was putting these things in your teeth and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and plus the other doctor who used to excruciatingly examine me. There were two doctors like that. One was a dentist, one was a doctor. You know, I do forgive her and release her because, quite honestly, she didn't know any better, and I don't think she did that maliciously. I think she just did what she thought she had to do, was programmed to do. And so I let that go, and I released it, and I'm okay with that because some part of me allowed that to happen, and I take full responsibility for all my experiences.
Well, sorry, Kay's just written in there. She said she was wondering because she knows Stuart's mother took him to Montauk, and Kay said that he or she can relate to that a little bit. So.
Oh, okay. Well, is Kay the only one listening?
No.
No, there's loads.
there's loads of people on.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's another question come in from Kelt. He was wondering what about Palladians, and also someone else wanted to know what do you think of Benjamin Fulford? Do you think he's a grey, a watcher, or something else which I can't repeat on live? I was going to say live television,
radio.
As I mentioned earlier, I do not like to comment about other people like that.
Yeah.
I just won't do that. So please understand.
Oh, we fully understand. I think that's very, very mature, very mature.
Yes, yeah. So I've grown up a little bit, eh? And maybe Kay could tell my mother, that I grew up a little bit. But as far as Pleiadians are concerned, most of it is programming from the government. The government took that genre of information back in the 1960s to create the New Age movement and create the channeling from satellites, which is all programming and mind control. And so most of what you hear from the so-called Pleiadians is manufactured by the government. Now, yes, there are Pleiadian beings. Yes, they do exist, but do they interact with people as the New Age would decree? No, not so.
So how do you deal with mediums who actually say they're in contact with the Pleiadians? And so they obviously seriously believe they are.
Of course they do, because it's an alter within their programming matrix that's activated. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. What we're going to do now, Stewart, is we're going to take Janet in from the cold, because we want to talk to Janet. And Janet, we'd like to know more about what you're doing yourself with expansions and part of the deprogramming. And tell us all about what you're doing now with Stewart.
Well, don't reveal all that information, for goodness sake.
Okay, listen. No. Okay, no. I don't.
It's a family show.
We don't want that information. You keep that to yourself.
My goodness. I thought Ireland was more Catholic than that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I actually started expansions long before I knew Stewart, which a lot of people don't know. So the business has actually been in existence for practically 40 years, a long time. And really what we do here is we do just about everything when it comes to helping people find out how to empower themselves, body, mind, and soul. So it's really, we have a little bit of something for everybody, literally, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's relationships, spirituality, as you can tell just from the interview with Stewart just a few minutes ago, whether it's alien, Illuminati. The basic thing is to find out who and what you are, to connect to your own source and move yourself forward. So we have lots of free information on the site. We have started memberships for those people who want more and who want a daily interaction with Stewart and I. So for only $8 for those people over there in Ireland who are watching their pennies these days, you can have access to over 60 affirmations a month. We have daily blogs. We have lots of articles, lots of things that are going on. We have in April our annual health seminar, which this one is called Death, Disease, Detox, and Determination, which will help you find out what's going on inside of yourself and, again, break any programs that you have going and not be subjected to the mass programming, not be allowed to be triggered, and to consider why the Illuminati wants you to have a shelf life. So there's lots of things to think about, and we put it out there for you to either accept or reject. We kind of found our way, and now it's up to you to decide if some of the information that's valuable to us can be valuable to you. So lots of things going on. Stewart will be in South Africa in June, and so if you're going to be in that part of the world, you want to go see him there. And in October, I believe it is, we are planning a trip to Russia. Russia's the bear. It's also Stewart's homeland. And we're going to be talking about using bear frequency to go inside and to bring out your inner rose, which Russia actually comes from La Russe. So we have lots of interesting things that come up. Well, as I said, it's a little bit of something for everybody. You've got a question between Stewart and I. We've one way or the other probably explored it one way or the other.
Okay, let's have a look at this, the programming. How does somebody know they've been programmed, or there's something up? Is there symptoms or something that they're experiencing or feeling that's when they contact you? How do they know? Give us an idea.
Well, we actually have a book called 13 Cubed, and on the back of 13 Cubed, we have a lot of lists of things that people can take a look at to see if that has to do with them. A lot of times people have nighttime experiences, and they don't know what exactly that means. They may wake up with seeing beings in their room. They may wake up with sleep paralysis. They may have headaches. They may not be able to sleep at all. A lot of times people who are programmed, believe it or not, are fascinated with things like fans, blinking lights, all kinds of things the public icons that are out there, those are also programming icons and triggers. If you have obsessive compulsive disorder, habits, things that won't go away, we have in our membership level a deprogramming journal that the young man who's working in there with us have fascination with puppets. All kinds of things that people don't talk about because they may be considered an oddity. And we've pretty well probably heard just about everything. And nothing really shocks us. Blood and gore, the vampire programming that's going on out there, which is getting people ready for New World Religion. People who are, say, involved in Green Star programming and so forth are fascinated with outer space type of things, Star Trek. All of those things that are out there, there's a reason. Anything that's in the public eye these days, there is a reason. And as Stewart said, most people are either mass programmed or specifically programmed. And when you don't know who and what you are inside of yourself, then any of those other things that are coming at you have a propensity to trigger you into some sort of action. So we want people to develop their own boundaries, to develop their own source, their levels of discernment, so they know what is you and what is something else. And if you figure it's not you and you know it's something else, you got to figure out what that is so you don't respond to that on a subconscious level.
I do agree with you on that point, definitely, that people have to become more self-aware and get to know who they are as a person. Because if they know who they are and they become self-aware, they'll have more control of themselves and their surroundings. So, one of the things I try and practice an awful lot of the time is that I stay away from negative people. Mm-hmm. I just stay away from them because I find that I'm in a happier place when I stay away from people who pull on my energy.
Well, and there's so many things out there for triggering. I tell people when you're talking about staying away from things, if you know something that triggers you, for instance, all the inundation of pornography on the internet, it's designed to trigger people sexually, and it's, again, designed to open up people up so that they are more programmable because the programming comes in through the lower chakra areas. So if you know something is triggering you, if you know something is to the point, and this is what these things happen, where it sucks you in, and if you feel sucked into something, most likely you're being held open so the programming can enter in you. You have to keep yourself away from that, but the first step, like you just said, is self-awareness. What bothers you? How does it bother you? And let's stop it.
Exactly, and of course, if you're using things like alcohol or drugs and stuff like that, you're going to be more susceptible, I reckon, for programming.
Absolutely, because it opens you up to the astral levels, and most people do not know how to navigate through the astral levels successfully. What usually happens is the astral comes into them. They have a lot of people with astral influences and attachments, which is also part of the programming, which is also at some point going to be taking people into the New World Religion should that come into fruition.
Okay, we have a quick question. Can I just say something quickly? Where do you stand regarding, I know there's the New Age side of things, but there are genuine spiritual people, and I'd class myself as a spiritual person. I'm not into religion, and I have my own perception of what God is. Not this guy with a beard sitting on a throne, but my own perception of that. And I find, because of my own kind of self-awareness and about keep staying away from negative people, I also try and, I suppose, in a way, cleanse, if you want a better word, my energy every now and again.
I cleanse 24/7 every single second, and that's what a lot of my work is, and the premise is everything that's coming into you, you give back, because basically if we look to the real reason that we're here and we go as far down as we can, we really are simply a finger of the God mind itself down here experiencing itself. And as we learn what it is, we are supposed to pass that knowledge back. And that is one of the things we'll be talking about in April at our seminar, because the reason people age, the people they get disease, is because they keep the energy to themselves rather than pass it up to where that it belongs, to its originator, to its source. So everything that comes in, basically 24/7, needs to go back. And so people need to be cleansing 24/7 every single second, and that will make a big difference in your health, your quality of life, length of life, whatever you want to do with yourself, so that you decide for yourself what you want to do with the years down here versus allowing the mass programming to feed into that and determine that for you.
Exactly, and I think the word disease is more dis-ease, because you're at dis-ease. And I think the cleansing is very important. We've said it before on the show. We are spiritual beings experiencing life in physical form. That's really it.
Absolutely. And so, people do not cleanse their minds, much less their body. And oftentimes, unfortunately, and not until that they have some kind of an issue. And Stuart and I are both very proactive, and we believe in going and seeking the challenges out rather than let the challenges find us, because then we're in control of the challenges instead of vice versa.
So you're talking about the law of accident there, which is what I say to people. Don't hope that it happens, make it happen.
Well, and of course, then we do just one extra little step, which you may also too, whereas we say, let's align my will with thy will. I want my will to go along with my oversoul and God mind. I want to work with that Trinity. To me, that's the true Trinity, so that we are all going along for the same goal, and I have my source behind me. And so a lot of times, because of what's going on with the Illuminati and the outer world and the instilling fear out there, or that they have more money, or they have more machines, or they have more this or more that. You have the oversoul God mind. You have the most powerful thing in existence. So you have no reason to fear that. Once you activate your mind and activate your knowledge, your conscious knowledge, it's already there. You just have to learn how to use it. And it's like driving a car. You can sit in a car, but if you don't have a key or you don't know what to do with it, once you even have the key, it's powerless to you. So you already have all the tools you need, but if you don't know how to activate and use it, again, you become powerless. But we tell you how to activate it. We tell you what you already have, and we show you how good you already are and what your abilities already are, so you can activate it yourself and become who you're designed and destined to be versus what somebody else is trying to feed you into.
And I totally agree. I think that's very, very important for people to learn that skill and learn about it. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve has a few questions there.
One just popped into my head there a few minutes ago. And when we're talking about the programming, and I know Stuart mentioned it earlier on the interview about the Wi-Fi and cell towers, etc., and the scalar waves, is there anything we can do? I know we did have a lady on, and I can't remember the name of the crystal, but she did say there was some class of a crystal that we could use, and it would kind of absorb these negatives, like whatever was coming from the Wi-Fi and the cell towers. But is there anything that you could suggest, either Janet or Stuart, that how we could protect ourselves? I mean, I know we've taken precautions here, whereby we switch off Wi-Fi, we don't really kind of use cell phones, and we steer clear of cell towers and all when possible. But is there anything that we can do, kind of be proactive to just kind of keep ourselves clear or away from all this crap?
As I mentioned before, the strongest thing you have is your mind. You just have to need to do it. And so what I tell people is that first of all, people don't have their boundaries. So the easiest thing you can do is you can take a look with your own mind at how far out your auric field extends. And with your mind, just like you would raise your arm up and down, you pull that auric field in close to you. And around that, you put a violet bubble with a mirror on the outside. And that means anything that's coming at you is reflected off of you. And you keep your bubble filled with violet. And that's a very basic thing that everybody can do right here and now. And beyond that, we have more advanced protection techniques that we teach you what to do, because it's extremely easy to do. But people have never been told about it. Instead, they try and avoid things. You should be able to walk wherever you want to walk. Don't let them tell you where you can go or what you can do.
The color violet is a filtering and protection energy. And I do teach a technique called the ultimate protection, where you put yourself or anything you want to protect in a violet tetrahedron, which then goes into a violet octahedron, and you can see that on our website, and nothing will get through that whatsoever. And we have other techniques using other frequencies that you can use. So yes, there are many ways we can protect ourselves from all of this.
Okay, and this is based on visualization because thought has energy.
Well, actually, it's more than visualization. It's actually creating. And it's already there. Everything already exists. You just have to know it. And then you can go in there and you can start moving and manipulating the energies. That's what the Illuminati does, but they do it for negative reasons. We take the same laws and principles, and we teach you how to do it for positive reasons. That's all.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, another question came in there from Kay. She was basically asking about, now I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm guessing it is, that Stewart can speak and comprehend 10 languages, and Kay was wondering, did he learn these languages himself, or was this part of the Montauk programming?
Well, I grew up in a home where there were many languages spoken. And so my earlier years were filled with 3 or 4 or 5 different languages, so they became very easy for me to learn. And then as I got older and I was involved in intelligence services, I learned other languages. So I just had a propensity for it.
Wow. But, 10 languages... It's fantastic because I know a lot of people, even here in Ireland. I think our original language was Irish, but through being occupied by the UK, our main language now is English, and even a lot of school children. I know they say you can kind of learn and comprehend the language quite easily below the age of 5. But even a lot of the school children here, trying to learn our national language of Irish, it's like brain surgery. It's unbelievably, it's so difficult.
Well, people have been dumbed down because of the fluoride in the water, as we know. Mm-hmm. So they just don't have the capacity as we had years ago because of this programming. There's a lady there who's asked a question to you, Stewart. Margot, I think her name is. That Margot?
No, that's Maggot.
Margaret.
That's maggot.
Maggot. Well, I didn't want to say maggot because
maybe it's French. It's French. It's Margot.
Margot. Okay, you could ask. Oh, maggot.
You guys are into the Guinness, I know.
I know. Yeah,
wish.
I tell you, we should be on into the Guinness. Can you ask Stewart about Antichrist programming?
Well, you can ask me about it.
Stewart's doing his own version of Guinness.
I'm looking for my mug over here. But, okay, Antichrist programming, I'm not exactly sure what this person means by that. Is this a reference to New World religion or the antithesis to that?
Well, we do know, in the truth movement, we find that there's a lot of people who just see the physical and don't understand there's a spiritual and energetic fight going on as well. And maybe the Antichrist programming has just got to do with the negative side and the satanic Luciferian side of things.
Well, I think perhaps it's a reference to what the Illuminati's script is, and that's the Book of Revelation. And, of course, in that is the Antichrist persona, which I feel may already be in place.
Yeah. I think there's an awful lot happening now at the moment. We do have guests that have come on and talked about child abductions. An awful lot of people going missing, especially children. And we had Ted Gunderson on when he was alive, and he is an ex-FBI, head of FBI Los Angeles. And Ted was saying about the kids being taken and being abused and going through satanic rituals, and that seems to have grown tremendously over the last few years. A lot of people going missing, especially children.
I think we're more aware of it now too with the internet. Where everybody is not just in your area, you can see what's going on all over the world. But it's always really been very prolific.
It has to do with sexual magic ritual, and even slavery in various parts of the world.
Yeah, I remember, again, just referring back to Credo Mutwa when he was talking about, he said boys more than girls because it's something got to do with the endorphins released into the blood due to fear and the pain.
Well, it also has to do with male energy, which projects out, whereas female energy takes in. And so in the certain sexual magic ritual, there is a need for the male energy to be projected out so that it can be then absorbed and enhanced and broadcast afterwards.
Do you feel that with Gaia being obviously Mother Earth, that we need more of this female energy and move away from the male energy that's been dominating the planet for centuries?
I think that really it's out of balance. And so what they're really trying to do is bring about a false androgyny, which is indicative of the reptilian situation. So what they're doing is they're feminizing men, and they're creating more masculine females, and they're also imprinting everybody for group sex and a lot of other things going on out there. So there really is just a mixing up of the energy, which goes way back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, that people don't know who and what they are, and therefore they are imitating whatever the mass imprinting is being shown to them.
We have noticed that, and we've talked about that before on the show, regarding the chemicals that are being used on a daily basis, and the changing, the feminine, men being more feminine and women being more like lagerlouts and being more men, and that's been over the last few years.
And not only that, but I mean, even what you just said there about the girls being lagerlouts or whatever, maybe there's a different terminology in the US, but they now have TV shows based on that. Girls going out getting drunk and what they get up to. It's now a television show.
Yeah.
No, unbelievable.
No, the change in the whole lot, and it's. I mean, it's more. You can see it more than what you could go back 10 years. You didn't really see that, but there is a big change going on, which is worrying, because one of the things I was on Facebook, and one of the ladies said that there's a higher level of men going to doctors saying that they have breast cancer, and this is men.
Yeah. No, that's been going on actually for a long time, but it all has to do with nurturing. The breasts represent nurturing, and there is no nurturing that's going on. Female energy, people don't know what that is. True feminine energy, they don't know what that is, and that was started back with the women's liberation movement, and that was not about women being equal to men. That was about changing women into men. There are two different frequencies that function. If we go back to the soul personality, there really is no male or female. But here in this reality, we do have that specific expression. And so they took the expression of the feminine, which is very nurturing, and it is restorative, and there are a lot of things that happen with nurturing women that it's taken away. I mean, that's why the family's being broken up. The children are not being nurtured. The family is dissipating. Our family ties are dissipating. We are really, what they're doing is they're isolating people. I call it isolation programming, which most people buy into, unfortunately, these days. And that's, again, another way to control us, because you will fight for your family, but you're not necessarily going to put that same fight into strangers. So they're pulling us apart, and they're really, what they want is a one-world army.
Definitely, and the women's lib. I was watching the show got to do with Aaron Russo when you were saying that the Rockefeller Foundation actually funded the women's lib movement, because at the time they were only getting tax basically on one person in the family. Now with the women going out and being able to work, they were getting more tax, and then the school system became the parents, and then they could start using the educational system to start conditioning the kids in what way they want to be.
Absolutely, and that's what they're doing there. They're starting to take over raising our children, because even here in the U.S., they're pushing now for the schools for longer days, for year-round, because, this way the parents can work, and you turn your kids over to the state, and the state raises them for you. So that's what's happening, and that's what they want. That's what they want.
And we can see that now with the way things are over here, that the parents are struggling to pay the mortgage, so the two of them are going out to work if they have work. And the kids are just left all day with childminders.
That's right.
And it's, and that's not really the best way to do things. But unfortunately, this is the way the system's working. I'm just going to pass you over to Steve. There's a few questions there.
Yeah, before they go off the screen here in front of me. This is another question from Kay. Kay's asking lots of good questions here this evening. Where is the question? When you do release work, do you always need to replace with good thoughts?
I always say that when you send something out, it leaves an empty space, so you need to fill it back in. And again, it's you have to remember that you are actually manipulating the energy. So if you mentally manipulate energy out of you, then there is a space, and you have to do something to put something back in it. Okay. Otherwise, the old stuff is just going to come back in again.
Yeah, and that's where the use of affirmations could come in, so that you can put in what you desire to have.
Or you can do colors, you can do all kinds of things. It's up to you. Archetypes, we teach all of that. Tones.
Okay. Another question. I actually thought this was a question. I thought this was one of those a music question for you, but it's not. It's about Mixmaster G, and can I mix Master G and Lightning Storm?
One of their products.
Oh, yeah. It's actually a clearance product. We no longer carry those products. But, yes, you can use them together.
Okay. And Mixmaster G is also a good name for a DJ.
Okay, we have another question for you. Stewart, when you say Israel, do you mean Zionism?
No. Zionism is a political belief system, and Israel is a nation, and the two are mutually exclusive.
I don't think. I think Zionism doesn't just. It's not just related to Israel. I think it's an underground movement or an Illuminati movement of a group of people who believe on a certain principle.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, so to turn around and say it's them or it's them, it's not. I mean, the Illuminati are mixed. There's no one group from one country. They are a mixed bunch globally. And
and there are Christian Zionists, and there are German Zionists and Israeli Zionists. They're all it's a global thing.
The world is created because of the mind pattern of the people who live upon it, and so it's really easy for people to sit around and throw things out. And that's why I say you have to take care of what's in you, because whatever's in you is going to be projected out there. If you're warring inside of yourself, there's going to be war. If you're overcome with emotion, you're going to have flooding in your area. It just, whatever is in you is being out pictured. And so it's a good idea to be aware of that, because that's your reflection, and it's telling you exactly what you need to do within yourself. And if you want to change the world, then you start by changing your own mind pattern.
So would you say we are what we think?
Exactly.
And so is the world.
Well, I use this analogy. Thoughts are like film. The brain is the projector, and physical reality is the screen. So if you don't like the movie that's playing around you, you need to change the film, which is the way you think.
And you would obviously recommend meditation for people as well, I take it.
Well, yes, as meditation is, part of a right brain function, and prayer is a left brain function, and visualization combines them both at the pineal gland.
And what you want to be, you work at it 24/7. Like I said, not just, you take time here and take time there, maybe if you're doing some deeper level work, but it's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. Your lifestyle is about combining body, mind, and soul, so that everything is going in the same direction and the same time in the way that is most uplifting and beneficial for you personally. And that's going to reflect in the outer world and in everybody else, and in your finances, in your relationships, in your wealth, and absolutely everything that goes on. So you need to know who you are. You need to get into alignment. You need to create a lifestyle that is holistically and blended. And that's the way we were originally, until we bought into all this mass imprinting and programming that took us apart and made us these bits and pieces.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to start focusing on now more than anything. Okay, well, I tell you what, we're coming to the end of the show, and it's been fantastic. What can I say? I mean, the information has been brilliant from both yourself, Jenna, and Stewart. It's been fantastic. So what we normally do at this time... hang on.
I've one question left.
Okay.
Last question of this evening. It goes to Kay. I actually just wrote back to Kay to say I didn't actually understand the question, so I wasn't kind of sure what way to put it to you. But I'm just going to put it as Kay has written it, because she reckons that you will understand. And the question is, what kind of programming require male to deprogram if you were female?
Can you please repeat that again?
No. No.
All right.
What kind of programming require male I don't know if it requires males, or it says what kind of
It
programming require a male to deprogram if you are female.
I think she's getting that from my True Reality of Sexuality book, where I talk about deprogramming or physical deprogramming techniques, and I state in there that really there cannot be any female deprogrammers because it runs a risk of absorbing the energies, whereas male, as I mentioned earlier, project out, so they will not absorb the downloading of another person's deprogramming efforts. So what I think she may be asking is if only a male can deprogram a female, or maybe Janet understands better.
Well, I'm thinking that perhaps she's talking about the physical deprogramming. And again, I think she needs to read True Reality of Sexuality. But any programming is put in usually through the lower chakras, as I mentioned before. So oftentimes it has to come out that way. So a male can deprogram a female physically, but a female cannot physically deprogram a male.
That's quite interesting, all right. That is very interesting. Because you talked about the outward energy on the male. But I'll tell you what, you've been fantastic on the show. The information has been brilliant. And it's this time I kind of say thanks very much for coming on the show. I'm going to pass over to Steve, and Steve's going to get all the communications.
I'm going to do my thing.
You're going to do your thing. Do your thing, Steve.
Okay. Both of you guys, it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, when Alan said to me it was going to be jaw-dropping information, he didn't lie. I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic. And what Alan didn't say, and he normally does say at the end of the show, I'm guessing it's just a little oversight, but I mean, if possible, I think we'd love to have you guys on again.
Oh, definitely,
at some stage.
Oh, we would love to, yeah.
That'd be very nice.
Yeah, we appreciate all the beer you sent over here.
It's on the way, I promise.
If you ever get over here, we meet up and get you a Guinness anyway, that's for sure.
There you go. No, we love Ireland. We've been there a couple times, and we love it. And of course, that's where some of my family comes from.
The McCormicks.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Well, seriously, no. If the next time you're over here, definitely do look us up. We'd be only too delighted to hook up with you anyway. But you have mentioned your books, and you have mentioned a website there several times throughout the interview, but you didn't actually give us the website address. So, I mean, I know some of our listeners may have it already, but for those who don't, would you like to maybe throw out the information now how people can get to your website or get your book or find out some more information about your work?
Sure, expansions.com. Expansions has an S on the end, expansions.com. We'll get you to our website. We have lots of free information. As I said, during this last year, we started actually a membership site because we want to be able to deliver more specific information to people who are really involved. And we have wonderful things for only $8 a month. You can get a membership where you have affirmations. We interact with you. You can ask your questions. And the $23 is the next layer of membership where we have a deprogramming journal in there, and in that section you can ask all the questions you want about anything, and we read everything, we answer what's appropriate. But we have seminars coming up in April. We are all over the world. We do personal consultations with people. We do all kinds of body scans. We do programming scans. As I said, we do a little bit for everybody. We do health scans, you name it, we've got it.
Podcast.
Oh, and we also do podcasts. I do a cooking podcast, which is really a lot of fun, where I teach people how to feed themselves healthfully, and I explain the mindset that goes beyond just the food itself. So we just, like I said, we have a little bit of something for everybody. We enjoy our work. We enjoy our website. We enjoy learning and growing. We're not dull and boring people. We're always doing something different. So we love it when you join us.
Fantastic.
I think we can say we've absolutely had a great time. I mean, 2 hours have literally just flown by. Just
brilliant information. What can I say? I mean, that was a great interview that you did with Regine on CMN, and again, brilliant information, and it gets it out there to the people, and it lets people think, and it gives them something to think about. Go and research, check out your website and all that kind of stuff. But just stay with us for a minute there. We're just going to go up to a musical break, and to our listeners, we'll be back in a few minutes.